Today is a special episode of Enlightenment Today because today is Buddha Purnima, where we celebrate the birth of the Buddha. Now, Buddha Purnima is one of my favorite days of the year alongside Mahashivaratri and also Guru Purnima. And a lot of people don't celebrate Buddha Purnima because they think it's isolated to Buddhists, but all of us who are on the path of liberation and who are sincere about enlightenment and about the path of peace, we should celebrate the day of Buddha Purnima because it is the day that the Buddha was born. But I'm not talking about the physical birth of the Buddha here. I'm talking about the birth as a Buddha. And that's one reason we celebrate it on this particular full moon day. So what we are celebrating today is, as I said, the birth of the Buddha, not the birth of the physical form. There's actually two births of the Buddha that we need to talk about, and they speak about this in the scriptures. They speak about Rupakaya and Dharmakaya. Now, Rupakaya is the physical birth of an eventual Buddha, whereas Dharmakaya is the birth of a Buddha, if that makes sense. So these are the two births of the Buddha. So the first birth I want to talk to you about is the Rupakaya birth, because we have to talk about the physical form first, right? So when we talk about Rupakaya, we are talking about Prince Siddhartha Gautama or Siddhartha Gautama. And he was born in Lumbini in Nepal in around April 8, 563 BCE. A lot of scholars in that don't really believe in that date, but there is a lot of agreement on April 8, 563 BCE, or even in some cases, some people say his actual birth fell somewhere in 563 BCE, even though some scholars have pushed that date back later. So this is the Rupakaya birth in Lumbini. So the Rupakaya birth is the birth of the physical form. And what is interesting is when you visit Lumbini, it is the least impressive place of the four great Buddhist pilgrimage sites. The other three being Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha became enlightened, Sarnath, where his first teaching happened, and also Kushinagar, where the Buddha died and he experienced parinirvana. So we have those four sites, and having gone to those sites, and a lot of Buddhists actually speak about this, Lumbini is probably the least impressive. And some people suggest because it is related to the Rupakaya birth of the Buddha. Only speculation, but it is interesting that the Rupakaya birthplace of the Buddha is somewhat not as powerful as the other three locations. But nevertheless, why Lumbini is significant is this is the last physical birthplace and the last life of the enlightened one. This is the beginning of it. It all began in Lumbini. This is the last life of the enlightened one, of the Buddha. And that's why we should visit Lumbini and why it is significant, because we should actually respect the Rupakaya birth of an enlightened Buddha. This is the culmination of births and essentially the end of a journey where the Buddha had lived life after life, and this is the last life. And this is why we actually celebrate Lumbini, because that's the birthplace. It's the culmination of lives. This last life, this rebirth, was the one for this being to become a Buddha. This being we know as Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha. So when we talk about our lives, we often think that this is it. This is our life. But from Buddhist philosophy and also Hindu philosophy and Taoist philosophy is that there is the concept of reincarnation, and we need to take that seriously if we are on the path of Eastern spirituality. So this life is not your de facto life. So this birth that you went through in this life is not your de facto birth. We've gone through many births according to Eastern spirituality, and hopefully this is all of our last birth according to Buddhist philosophy, where we can attain Buddhahood. So to understand that all a little bit more when we talk about rebirth and reincarnation and why we come into a human form to give us the opportunity to become a Buddha, we need to understand Buddhist philosophy and metaphysics. And when we look at Buddhist philosophy and metaphysics, they speak about the 6 types of births. And this explains that there's 6 realms that we can be born into. There's the hellish realm or the hell realm. There's the hungry ghost realm. There's the animal realm. There's the human realm. There's the DEMI-GOD realm. And then there's the God realm. The God's realm, I should say. The realm of gods. So there's these 6 realms. And I'll explain these briefly, and I'll give you something to think about after I explain them. So when we look at probably the least of them, when we look at the hell realm, this is someone who has a massive accumulation of negative karma, either in whatever realm or whatever life, but they've accumulated all this negative karma. Their life was focused on suffering, where they would either bring suffering to themselves or they would cause suffering for others. So these sorts of beings have a lot of hatred and a lot of anger towards life and themselves, and this brings our energy down into this hellish realm where we are born into this hellish realm according to Buddhist philosophy. And so in that realm we continue to suffer, and we live in that realm of constant suffering, and that's a massive accumulation of negative karma. The next realm is the hungry ghost realm. Now it's kind of translated as hungry ghost because this is someone who is never satisfied. So always hungry for something else and trying to conquer the world and so forth and so on. So when we think about the hungry ghost realm, we're really thinking about greed. Someone who's never satisfied. They're very greedy. They're trying to just gain something from someone else. And this is the energy of the hungry ghost realm. So if you have that sort of energy about you, according to Buddhist philosophy, we go to this hungry ghost realm. We are reborn in this realm, and whatever that experience may be. But it's because we're never satisfied. We have an undying hunger to prove ourselves or to acquire something and so forth and so on. And also we have a tendency to try and accumulate wealth and status, and we have a lot of greed. Our focus is completely oriented towards the external world and not towards the heart. So this is part of the energy of the hungry ghost realm. The next realm is the animal realm. Now, why it's called the animal realm is because this realm is where we live with impulsive behavior, where we ruminate, where we're easily swayed by the worldly tides of whatever's fashionable and so forth and so on. And also where we're very lazy and we're not focused on our own liberation, where we're just kind of just chilling out and just gorging on food, and we just ruminate, and we're very slovenly. And this is really what the animal realm is. So when we live in that sort of energy, we have a rebirth in this animal realm according to Buddhist philosophy. And so obviously when we're lazy and we ruminate and we're just, gorging off society, this leads to terrible habits, which then, our whole life becomes focused on our belly. How can we fill our belly? How can we get something from someone? Just so we can just be lazy and just, mindless. And this is obviously completely against what it means to be Buddhist or what it means to be spiritual in general if we are to be mindful. The next realm is the human realm. Now, the human realm is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to end the cycle of samsara and to hopefully become a Buddha. This is what the human realm symbolizes. The human realm, in a sense, is kind of like a pivot within these 6 realms. It's like a place where we can choose our fate, where we can decide which path we will follow. And if we are going to be sincere and committed to the path of liberation, that is the opportunity to be human. A lot of people actually neglect this opportunity to be human. Even if you don't believe in this whole sixth realm and six types of birth thing that Buddhism speak about, people still neglect this opportunity we have to be human. It's such a privilege to be human when you think about it. And we should really be grateful to be human. Even if you don't believe in spirituality, it's such a privilege to be human. And when we actually think that, then a lot of things that in the world, like, anxiety and stress, suicide, all these things will drop away, because we will actually begin to have an appreciation of what it means to be human, which is very important. The next realm is the demigods realm, what is called in Sanskrit as the Asuras. And some people call this realm the Deva realm, and some people say that the Deva realm is actually for the gods, but some people call it the Deva realm for this realm. But we will just say the demigod realm for English sake. And a birth in this realm is a very angelic realm. It's where we have supernatural powers and we are very powerful, but we still have a lust for power and influence in this realm. There's still that lust, that hunger for influence, for trying to sway people with our own agenda. There's all of this. And we have much more capability of achieving that because we have all these supernatural powers. We're super powerful. We're very powerful beings in this realm. What's interesting is when we look at Buddhist philosophy, they actually say that in the demigod realm, they're always trying to fight the actual gods. They're trying to fight the gods. They're in conflict always with the gods to try and have superiority over the upper realm. And they're also trying to influence the human realm. They're trying to negatively influence the human realm and to have control of the human realm, where they cause natural disasters and conflicts, diseases, and all of these things. And so there is that idea in Buddhist philosophy that, yes, the demigod realm, even though they may be angelic and in some sense a higher state of consciousness, they still are influenced by power. They're still influenced by the need to try and have control of other beings. And so that's why they're always trying to, well, apparently have wars with the gods and trying to negatively influence us, because we don't really know what's going on in this realm with that sort of stuff. But that's apparently sometimes the demigods trying to mess with us and trying to influence us in certain directions. You don't have to believe that, but that's what it says. The last realm, the sixth realm, is the Deva realm. Like I said, some people use Deva for the demigods. Some people actually use the Brahma realm here, because Brahma being the god that is somewhat worshipped in Buddhism. That's why you see Brahma in Thailand a lot, where you'll see a shrine to Brahma and you're like, isn't this place Buddhist? But if you understand Buddhist philosophy and its relationship actually to Hindu philosophy, then you understand why there is a worship of Brahma in places like Thailand. And so Brahma here is worshipped in a sense because of Brahma is the god, the highest god thought of in Buddhism, which is kind of imported from Hinduism. And so we have this Brahma realm, or this Deva realm, or the realm of the gods. Let's simplify it, the realm of the gods. And in this realm, the gods are obviously very high-minded, very pious, very moral. So if your karma in a past life was very pious, very moral, and all you did was good deeds, and you were very selfless, then you would have a birth in this realm. In the realm of the gods, we have these heavenly qualities. And so we live these heavenly qualities. But it is a realm of pleasure. So being the gods, we live in this very pleasure-filled realm where all of our needs are taken care of. There's no need for work. There's an abundance of whatever there is in that realm, and all we experience is like this hedonistic pleasure. Not so much a joy, not so much a tranquil joy, but sort of a pleasure that most people are seeking in this world today, where we're seeking material comforts and so forth and so on. Even though that I'm sure that if this realm exists, it's not really that bound to material comforts, but it is still, in some sense, a realm of form. And so what can happen in the negative impact in this realm is that there can still be attachment and identity in this realm because you're a god. You're a god, right? You're a god. So there can be attachment and identity to your being, which keeps you away and eclipses your own liberation. So in the realm of the gods, in the Brahma world, there can be a lack of understanding of awakening or even the possibility of awakening happening because it is so pleasure-filled and it is such a realm of joy and delight. And I'm sure if it exists, then there would be a tendency to forget the reason that you exist as a being. You would forget that you need to jump off this wheel of samsara. So it can prolong even that suffering after life after life. You got to remember that inherently in pleasure, there can be suffering as well. Now, after hearing those 6 types of births and those 6 realms, do these 6 realms sound familiar? Now, why I ask you that is because there is an argument that these 6 realms or these 6 types of birth in Buddhism are actually psychological states that we live in rather than an actual physical place that we will go to or are born into. So there is that argument. And you can actually see, in some sense, how the former is actually much deeper than the latter. Like we can see that if these are psychological states that we live in, then it has a very deep teaching to teach us, because what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human? We can live in the other realms very easily, right? We can live in the hellish realm where we're just negative and we suffer a lot and we cause suffering to other people. And we can live in the God realm where we're hedonistic and every wish is taken care of. Everything is happening according to your own will and your own desire in that realm. So you can see an argument there that these are psychological states rather than actual places or actual realms. They are possibly realms within our mind. But I'll leave that one up to you to decide. But I thought I'd just throw that out there for you. But even though you can be in the God realm or the demigod realm, are these realms technically higher than the human realm? And I'm going to say to you, no. Because to become a Buddha, you have to be human. Buddhas are always human, according to Buddhist philosophy. A bodhisattva, on the other hand, can have a birth in another realm, because a bodhisattva is dedicated to the liberation of others, where a Buddha is a completely liberated being. And their liberation actually enlightens others and enlightens the world and shows us the path, as with Gautama the Buddha. So we all know the story, right? The Buddha's Rupakaya birth as Siddhartha Gautama happened in Lumbini. And he was a prince, but a discontent prince, and he wanted to follow the path of liberation. He wanted to find out if there was a deeper meaning to life. And so he left the kingdom. We all know the story, right? He left the kingdom and he embarked on this journey that we are all embarking on personally. And in embarking on this journey, he eventually gave birth to the Buddha. After Siddhartha Gautama left the kingdom, he went on a massive search and a massive journey. A lot of us are familiar with that. He went on a 6-year journey where he underwent extreme tapas, extreme asceticism. And a lot of belief for most of that time he was a samana, or we could say in Sanskrit, a shramana. And a samana or a shramana is someone who just walks straight. They just walk. They're like a wanderer, right? They're a wanderer. They just walk. That's their journey is just walking. So they just walk. And if they come across someone that offers food, they will take it. Or if they come across someone who will offer, a dwelling or clothes or somewhere to sleep, they will take it. But they don't ask anything. And from all accounts, Buddha was an extreme samana. he was someone who wouldn't walk the direction of a town, because some summoners, they will walk and then they just follow the road and they'll walk intentionally into town because they know they will get food and they know they will get something to drink and maybe a bed or something like this. But the Buddha, being as extreme as he is and highly intellectual as he is, and trying to really, really understand what enlightenment is that a lot of people can't experience, he just walked straight. And, wherever he ended up, he ended up. And if he didn't come across someone, he didn't come across someone. And so, as you could imagine, doing this for a long time has an extreme effect on the body. So, you see a lot of those pictures where Buddha's, his rib cages are exposed and he's shrunken right in. This is from following this path where he would rarely eat, he would always be fasting, sometimes not intentionally fasting, just because that there was no food offered. He just didn't have any resource around him. He didn't have any opportunity to eat food or even drink water. So he followed this sort of path for 6 years. And after following this path for so long, he almost killed himself just by starvation. He almost killed himself through starvation, because it's just such an extreme path to follow that. And there are still sadhus and yogis who still follow this path today. But in following this path, Buddha had still not attained enlightenment. All of this extreme tapas, this extreme asceticism, didn't get him to where he wanted to be. And it's because he was chasing this goal. He was searching for this place, whatever you want to call it, this enlightenment that he wanted to experience. And after almost dying, he finally accepted a milky soup from a young girl who was herding cattle. Well, that's so the story says. And he accepted this milky soup. And after eating the milky soup, he sat under a Bodhi tree, the famous Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. And he just sat there. He thought, I've been on this journey all that long. He had that soup. He sat there and he just decided, I'm just going to sit under this tree and I'm not going to desire, not to desire. I'm not going to even worry about desires at all. I'm just going to sit here. So Buddha just decided to sit under the Bodhi tree. And in letting go of his desire not to desire, when the full moon rose, he attained nirvana. It was in letting go of the search where he attained enlightenment. He sat down under the Bodhi tree and in a sense just gave up. He gave up the search. He called off the watchdogs and he ended this 6-year search. Now, when we think about nirvana, this is very important and poignant to the Buddha's story. It's the elimination of all desires, even the desire not to desire. But technically, when we look at nirvana, we could say blown out. And they often use a candle as an analogy, when we blow the candle out. So that's it. I'm finished. I have no more desires. And not even the desire to have enlightenment. That's even evaporated. The desire not to desire has evaporated. And so the candle was completely blown out. That's what happened under the Bodhi tree. What this means is when we have this experience of nirvana, this is the end of volition. Actually, the end of will itself. The end of will. You don't have a need to go out there and do things. You don't have an axe to grind no more. I often use that analogy. You don't have an axe to grind. You are completely at peace because your whole will to do and to be someone is completely blown out. Alan Watts actually said in a lecture once, and a lot of people get confused online about this, where Watts said, do you know how you will? And a lot of people go, will what? Will what? But he's asking, do you know how you will? Like the actual will that we have, the will to do things. And what Gautama the Buddha symbolizes the end of that will. And this is why the path of Buddhism and the path of the Buddha is so effective because it is the end of that will, the end of volition itself. That's actually what it takes to reach this complete enlightenment that the Buddha attained. And we all have that possibility. We all do. So this enlightenment that Siddhartha Gautama attained under the Bodhi tree is the birthday we celebrate today. It's the Dharmakaya birthday, the birth of the Buddha, an enlightened one. Not the enlightened one. We can say Buddha is the enlightened one because he is the most significant example of Buddha-ness, to use a new term. But that is what we celebrate today on this full moon day. So the Dharmakaya birth happened under the Bodhi tree in a little town in India that we now call Bodh Gaya. And this place will overwhelm you. I've been to Bodh Gaya many times. It's one of my favorite places for meditative retreat and just getting away from the world. It's such a powerful place. And as I mentioned before with Lumbini, when you relate Lumbini to Bodh Gaya, I mean, they're worlds apart. And a lot of people suggest that this is because of the Rupakaya birth and the Dharmakaya birth. The energy of the place is completely different. And when you're at Bodh Gaya, it's amazing. You can hear Thai monks chanting, you can hear Sri Lankan monks chanting, and Indian monks chanting, Bangladeshi monks chanting, and Bhutanese, all of these different nations chanting the Pali canon or the Sanskrit literature. But you can be sitting under the tree and hearing all that, but there is this extreme quiet in your mind. To use an example, if you were to sit in a city and there's people beeping the horns and this and that, it's probably going to annoy you. But you can be at the Bodhi tree, under the Bodhi tree, and you can just zero in on your meditation so easy. There's an energy there that I can't explain. The first experience I ever had there, I was completely overwhelmed by the atmosphere, brought to tears. And it's why it's my go-to place for meditative retreat. Don't get me wrong, the other three Buddhist places of pilgrimage are wonderful as well. But I feel that you should spend most time at the place of the Dharmakaya birth of the Buddha, which is under the Bodhi tree. So what does this day really symbolize? What do we celebrate today? We celebrate the birth of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya birth. But why it's important to all of us, not just Buddhists, is it's an opportunity and a chance for all of us to understand that we too can have a Dharmakaya birth. We too are waiting to become a Buddha. And we all have that opportunity in the human form, so we should not waste it. That's the opportunity we all have. Once we go through that Dharmakaya birth, we end the cycle of samsara. So this technically could be your last life, according to Buddhist philosophy. And in understanding Buddhism, we don't do that with belief or faith. We do that by purifying the mind, which is the essence of Buddhism, the purity of mind, the understanding of our own nature, our own Buddha nature. We don't do that by belief in some God or belief in some sort of external doctrine. We do that with work. We do that with inner work. The work is to purify our mind. And once we purify our mind, then, and only then, can we attain what the Buddha experienced. Before I go, I wanted to ask you guys in relation to what I spoke about today, is that next year, hopefully when the world opens up, I was planning a meditation retreat in Bodh Gaya. So there'd be a lot of time under the Bodhi tree. We would be visiting a lot of the monasteries around the area. Also, we may visit Vulture's Peak, which was a retreat for the Buddha not too far away from Bodh Gaya, and hopefully Nalanda University, which is very important, and the Buddhist evolution. So I was wondering who would be interested in such a retreat, which would be happening next year sometime, probably towards the second half of next year, considering the way of the world at the moment. I'm not sure really how things will be heading. But I wanted to put that out there. So leave a comment if you'd be interested in a meditation retreat like that. And I also wanted to mention that I'm planning also to have a few pilgrimages, but I wanted to know what pilgrimages you guys would be interested in. I'll mention 3 to you. And I have taken people on pilgrimage in India before. I've had small groups and I've had large groups. Sometimes the smaller group can be more of a problem than the large group, or vice versa. It depends on the people who come. It depends on how sincere actually the people are who come on these pilgrimages, and if they are really interested in Eastern spirituality and philosophy. But one of the pilgrimages would be a Shiva pilgrimage, so that would be down in Tamil Nadu. So we'd probably go to Tiruvannamalai, Mahabalipuram, Madurai, these sorts of locations, and meditate, and not just a holiday here. It's a tour, but we're there for spiritual purposes. The other one I wanted to mention to you was a Buddhist pilgrimage. So I mentioned the 4 great Buddhist sites. So we would hopefully go to all 4. But if Lumbini was problematic because it'd been over the border with Nepal, we would go to the 3 sites, which would be Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, and Kushinagar. And we would go to those locations. Amazing, amazing pilgrimage. That's another option. So tell me if that would be of your interest. And the last one would be a pilgrimage in the Kathmandu Valley in Nepal. So we would be visiting some of the great Hindu and Buddhist pilgrimage sites in the Kathmandu Valley and on the edge of the Kathmandu Valley. And we'd be going to some monasteries and so forth and so on to meditate. We'd be going to Swami Bhumanath, we'd be going to Bodhanath, we'd be going to all of these amazing sites. We'd be going to the biggest Shiva statue in the world, which is in the valley. So we'd be going to all of these places. So let me know which one of those is of interest. Is the meditation retreat of interest as well? Or are the 3 pilgrimage locations of interest? Let me know, because I'm kind of just looking for feedback here from you guys. And so let me know. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I hope you're all having a good Buddha Purnima. And remember, as I said, it is all of our opportunity to become a Buddha. That's the opportunity to be a human and to be alive as a human. So don't take this life for granted. Shanti, shanti, shanti.